From Kern Government Television, welcome to this week's Kern County Board of Supervisors meeting, originating from the County Administrative Center located at 1115 Truxtun Avenue, Bakersfield, California. Kern County's vision is to create and maintain a customer-centered county government designed to garner the confidence, support, and trust of the people we serve. Today's Kern County Board of Supervisors meeting will convene momentarily.
Board reconvene. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Supervisor Gleason.
Here.
Supervisor Scribner.
Here.
Supervisor Maggard.
Here.
Supervisor Couch.
Here.
Supervisor Perez.
Here.
Madam Council, report on actions taken in closed session.
Good afternoon, Chairman Gleason and members of the board. Today, your board heard items number 35 and 37 in closed session. No reportable action was taken on either of those items. Further, your board also heard item number 36 on the agenda in closed session, where you met with council and staff to discuss the matter of Gary Engel versus County of Kern. This is Workers' Compensation Appeals Board, case number ADJ 7638725. In this matter, by a unanimous 5-0 vote, your board approved settlement authority for a settlement by compromise and release in the amount of $125,000, less an attorney fee of $18,750 as a full and final release of liability regarding an injury suffered by a senior deputy sheriff. Your board further authorized County Council to present the proposed settlement to the Workers' Compensation Appeals Board for approval, authorized County Council to execute all necessary settlement documents, and authorize the Auditor Controller to issue warrants for payment of the order approving the compromise and release as requested by County Council. And that concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we'll kick things off this afternoon with a review of the consent agenda. Agendas on the tables by the doors as you enter the room, so help yourself so you can follow along. Consent agenda items, all items listed with a CA or C above the item number are considered routine and non-controversial by county staff. Consent items will be considered first and may be approved by one motion if no member of the board or audience wishes to comment or ask questions. If comment or discussion is desired by anybody, the item will be removed from the consent agenda and will be considered in listed sequence with an opportunity for any member of the public to address the board concerning the item before action is taken. So we'll go through the consent agenda items starting on page 2, items 5, 7 under Public Works Department, Admin and Engineering, items 8 through 11 under Public Works Department, Building and Development, items 12, Public Works Department Ops and Maintenance, 13, 14, County Admin Office, Administrative Office is 15 through 17, General Services Division, 18 through 24, and matters for executive approval, items 25 through 29. Is there anybody in the public wishing to pull any of these agenda items off? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the board to approve is anybody in the board wish to pull any consent agenda items off? In that case, I'd like the board to make a motion to approve the consent agenda and to adjourn as the Board of Supervisors reconvenes the Kern Sanitation Authority.
So moved. Second.
Please cast your votes.
Motion is approved. All ayes.
We are now sitting as the Kern Sanitation Authority. In the consent agenda items, we have item number 1. Is anybody in the public willing to want to pull this agenda item off the consent agenda? Seeing none, and the board. Seeing none, I will request for a motion on the consent agenda and to adjourn as the Kern Sanitation Authority and reconvenes the Ford City Taft Heights Sanitation District.
So moved.
Second.
Please cast your votes.
Motion approved. All ayes.
We're now sitting as the Ford City Taft Heights Sanitation District. On the consent agenda, we have item number 2. Is anybody in the public wishing to pull this agenda item off the consent agenda? Don't see anybody. Any of the board? Don't see anybody. I'm looking for the board to make a motion on the consent agenda and to adjourn as the Ford City Taft Heights Sanitation District and to reconvene as the Board of Supervisors.
So moved. Second.
Please cast your votes.
Motion approved. All ayes.
I'm sure we're all dizzy, but now we are sitting as the Board of Supervisors once again. Brings us to item number 3, public presentations. This portion of the meeting is reserved for the persons to address the board on any matter not on this agenda but under the jurisdiction of the board. Board members may respond briefly to statements made or questions posed. They may ask a question for clarification, make a referral to staff for factual information, or request staff to report back to the board at a later meeting. Also, the board may take action to direct the staff to place a matter of business on a future agenda. Speakers are limited to 2 minutes. Please state and spell your name. Anybody in the public wishing to take advantage of this opportunity? Seeing none, board member announcements.
Excuse me.
Oh, I'm sorry. Come on down.
I didn't walk fast enough.
No, you're doing fine. I was too fast.
Thank you. My name is Evelyn Young Spath. I am Executive Assistant to the President at California State University, Bakersfield. And I want to thank the Honorable Chair and members of the Board of Supervisors. I'm here to thank you for your appointment to the Board of Directors of the Golden Empire Transit District. I took my oath on September 7th and attended my first board meeting at the end of last month. I also want to thank you. It might help if I put on my glasses and stop being so vain. I also want to thank you for the improvements that have been made to the sidewalks and curbs in those pockets of the county where within the city limits to help make bus stops more accessible for our riders. I look forward to working with you, and I hope to meet with you individually to just discuss your hopes and aspirations for the Golden Empire Transit District. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am. Anybody else?
She's awesome.
That walks even slower. Board member announcements. Seeing none, we'll move straight off to item number 6. Request from Morris Echeverry for a summary vacation of a public utility easement totaling 10 feet in width on lots 1, 2, and 3 of tract map number 1267, Bakersfield area, environmental review, general rule pursuant to section 15061B3 of the state CEQA guidelines. That's it.
Mr. Chairman, may I say something before we begin this item?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Echeverry approached me before the meeting began just a moment ago and expressed to me that he may have had a change of heart about whether or not he wants this item to be heard. So I don't want to put words in his mouth, but if he is requesting that we not proceed with this request that is before us, I want to make sure I don't speak differently than he wants it to be said. So why don't we let him make his statement, and if that's the case, it may change the course of what we're about to do.
Right, so Mr. Echeverry, if you just express what you want the process to do, not the content, and we'll make a decision on how we move forward.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, thank you. Yes, I am requesting that this item be withdrawn and the fees, processing fees be forfeited.
Thank you, sir. Madam Counsel?
Chairman Gleason and members of the board, because this was a noticed matter, if there are other people here who want to comment, technically they should be allowed to comment regardless of whether the person who wishes to have the matter on the agenda wants it to proceed. So if there is anyone here to comment, they do have an opportunity and a right to be heard.
Does that change your opinion, Mr. Echeverry?
I would guess only if the board is going to move on, chooses to hear the matter. I mean, I understand Ms. Goldner's point is that they should be allowed to be heard, but if the board would then like to vote on the matter, then I would like a chance to speak.
Yeah. May I say something about that? Mr. Echeverry, I appreciate your being so candid with us about your desire not to proceed. Can staff not just explain then the implications of not proceeding so the public understands that? And if that means that the lot line adjustments that some people speculate might come later wouldn't happen, that means that the withdrawal of the easement doesn't happen, that means nothing happens, that kind of precludes the need for the public to say a lot. I'm not saying they can't say anything, but if staff explains the implications, I think that might make it simpler for everybody. You okay if we will let them do that first, Mr. Echeverry?
Sure, it's a procedural matter. I'm just asking for it to be withdrawn.
And I appreciate your statement to that effect.
Supervisor Maggard, through the chair, Scott Denny, current Planning Division Chief for the Planning and Natural Resources Department. If Mr. Echeverry withdraws the request, he could still process a lot line adjustment, and it would still reflect the easement that was originally proposed to be summarily vacated in it.
there are 3 lots that are currently in place,
Yes.
and one of those lots, 2 of those lots have a home that's built across them. The lot that's to the south, not south, to the east, is a separate lot, and that lot exists, and Mr. Etchecherry could build on that lot without approval of this board because that exists. Is that not correct?
That is correct. Advanced Planning Division Chief Craig Murphy with me today has put up a copy of the existing parcel configuration that you described, which does reflect an existing dwelling built across lots 2 and 3. Mr. Etchecherry could do a lot line adjustment to reestablish the lot lines as shown on this map, which would have Lot 1 as being a buildable lot. He could ministerially put a house on that once the lot line was reestablished.
But the question that's before us today was whether or not we would consider removing an easement that runs along the western edge of lot number 1 and abuts against the back of lots 2 and 3. So if that easement is not being removed because his request for us to remove it is being withdrawn, then the lot that he could build on would be lot number 1, unless, I guess, he chose to raise the other property and completely change the
If he
layout.
reestablishes the lot lines as shown, you are correct. The 10-foot easement would still exist. 5 feet of it would exist on the western boundary of Lot 1, and 5 feet would exist on the western boundaries of Lot 2 and 3. So it would be encumbered
Okay.
with a public utility easement.
So the only buildable lot at this point would be lot number 1 in the event of some, otherwise it would require some future action by this board.
The only buildable lot using that configuration would be Lot 1. If he decides to do a lot line configuration that uses a different manner, and if Mr. Murphy would put that up, if he tries to, with a lot line adjustment, you're simply reestablishing the lots in a different pattern. If he does something like this, then that easement that you previously saw, and Mr. Murphy could point towards the top, right there, comes south now. From that point south, that easement would occur through a portion of Lot 2 under this configuration, and it would still be there. I don't know how developable that Lot 2 would be.
So I want to make sure that one of the concerns the neighborhood has is whether or not the configuration you currently have on the screen could be, he could proceed with that configuration. If we do not hear the item and vote on withdrawing the easement, can that configuration proceed without the ultimate approval of this board?
With the easement being reflected in the map, yes. The easement would still exist on that proposed parcel 2. And it would reduce the buildable area. He could not build within that easement.
So whose approval would be necessary to reconfigure the 3 lots in the manner that they are depicted on that map, differently than they are currently in existence?
The planning director through a lot line adjustment. He would have to show where he was consistent with the provisions of the general plan adopted by your board and its goals and policies, the zoning ordinance, and the land division ordinance.
And I don't know that that's his interest. Were that to be his interest, that would be the case whether we remove that easement today or we do not remove that easement today.
That is correct.
So the purpose for us to have this discussion and consider removing that easement is moot if he withdraws it. And if there was a future interest by Mr. Etchecherry and Mr. Newman, I believe, is your partner, if they wanted to proceed with changing these lots, would there be some public notice to the neighborhood that would be the case so that they would have an opportunity to speak to the planning director in the event that such a request would ever be processed going forward?
If there was a development in the conceptual plan that did not adhere to a county standard, okay, then there would be a notice of opportunity for a public hearing. But if he designs the map such that it complies with the county standards, there would be no hearing.
Is it still at the discretion of the planning director as to whether or not the redrawing of those lots per that configuration, is that still at the discretion of the planning director, or is the planning director compelled to do so?
As long as he makes the necessary findings, he could receive that type of configuration.
Is it at the discretion of the planning director?
Could I read the section of the ordinance?
Sure.
Section 19355050C, review and approval of lot line adjustment, states the planning director may approve or deny any application for lot line adjustment. Such decision shall include findings in accordance with provisions of this title. This decision shall be final, subject to appeal in accordance with section 19.35050.d. So she could approve or deny with findings a lot line adjustment.
She can make findings to approve if that was her conclusion, or she can make findings to deny if that was her conclusion.
Correct.
Okay. Is that decision appealable to the Board of Supervisors?
Yes, it is.
So if the planning director were to make findings that were to allow this to happen, and the neighborhood was not pleased with that, would there be some notice given that that had occurred so they would be aware, so they could then appeal it to this board?
Yes, that is correct.
And then could this board decide whether or not it would either uphold or reverse that, whatever decision the planning director had made?
You are correct.
Okay, very good. So this is America. We have a right to free speech. I'm not saying that you cannot stand up and speak if you don't. If you want to do that, you're welcome to do that. But the question has changed, and his withdrawal of it, I think, removes the pressing issue as to whether or not that easement will be removed, and therefore it could potentially result in a different process. I don't know that it will. I have no idea what his interests are. We've not discussed that. But if in the event that that were to occur, you would then be able to eventually appeal back to us, and we could either affirm or deny that that would be the case. Okay? With that, I think, Mr. Chairman, I would defer to you to proceed as you see fit.
Thanks, Mike.
Yeah.
Okay. We have a item. It was on the agenda. It is now withdrawn. I think it's fair to offer, we understand the process that if he goes through with any lot adjustment around the Board of Supervisors, that action could be appealable to the Board of Supervisors, so we may end up back here someday, God forbid. But why don't we ask, I don't mean God forbid to mean I was taking any particular position, I'm sorry for that phrase. But I am going to open up for a comment. So, sir, if you'd like to make a comment on this, I'm more than welcome to hear your perspective.
Well, I thank you very much. I'm Robert Beck. I own the property directly across the street from 3101. I also own the property behind. And I am hoping that this is a change of heart on the owners of 3101. We have 105 signatures from neighbors who are deeply concerned. We are dealing with a neighborhood plotted in 1946 with no changes such as this occurring. We are one of the historical neighborhoods in Bakersfield, Upper La Cresta. The Alta Vista Street is home of myself, the owner of Pyrenees Bakery, the Honorable Mike Bush, and others. Lot sizes are half acre and up. And the boundary for our particular neighborhood is the alley behind that property that curves on up around Panorama. And I think you're all familiar with the historical nature of the neighborhood. So I'm going to hope that Maurice is not pulling a end run, and and that they've considered the nature of the neighborhood and the desires of the neighborhood, and that we can come to something proper reflecting that. And with that, thank you. Appreciate all the work you do.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Any other comments? Yes, sir.
My name is Matthew Rotherham. I live at 3105 Alta Vista. North of that property, my lot line is right butted up to it. My partner couldn't be here today. He asked off last time we were supposed to be heard. Things changed, and we're hoping that doesn't happen again as far as other things that seem to be happening. We were told that the best thing we could do was to start a petition. Do you know how hard it is to go around a neighborhood and get signatures nowadays, let alone people answering their doors to a great-looking guy like me, bald head and everything like that, holding a clipboard? Really? Thank you. What I'm saying is, I put a lot of time and effort into this because you have to put your feet into my shoes, knowing that my partner and I spent thousands and thousands of dollars for our house to be in an established neighborhood where we felt comfortable, and now all of a sudden somebody turns around and rips that from us. Our property value is going to sink so quickly. 3 houses looking into my backyard, in my pool, not a great situation. And I don't think you would like that either. Okay? I've got some pictures of the property that have been that way for 2 years since we moved in, and nothing has changed. My partner and I own multiple rentals. We make sure that we have a pool guy and a lawn guy out there every single week, because that's what we just do, okay? But if you look at these pictures, weeds are 6 to 8 feet tall in our backyard that we can look down into from 3101. 8-foot weeds don't happen overnight. And when they started the construction, that's when I was going through surgery and had to stay in my bed for 2 weeks. And then I look outside when I could finally walk again, and there were mounds of debris that stayed there for 7 months. Put your feet in my shoes. Know how much money I've spent and how things can turn with a snap. I appreciate your time today.
Thank you, sir. Any other comments? Okay, that item has been withdrawn. Excuse me, Madam Council.
Chairman Gleason and members of the board, what I would suggest is perhaps a motion to accept withdrawal of the applicant's application.
Supervisor Mayor, any final thoughts?
I would make the motion to withdraw the item.
Second.
Please cast your votes.
Motion is approved. All ayes.
Thank you, Madam Council. This gets us to adjourn to Tuesday, October 11th, 2016 at 9 a.m.
So moved.